Welcome on in, football fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with your DFS and prop preview for tonight's Monday Night Football slate. So we've got ourselves a little bit of a slog of a matchup between the Giants and the Seahawks, but still plenty of large field contests to take down and some prop slips that are just begging to be cashed out there on our end. So here in this video, going to break down what you need to know about this matchup to go out there and have yourself a profitable slate. We'll talk about some of the game scripts that might unfold, some of the game theory notes for DFS, and of course, a few pieces of value on Underdog and on Prize Picks that I think you might want to go out there and attack yourselves. So quick video here, a lot to get into. Let's go ahead and start it off with the DFS side of things tonight. Tonight's showdown slate is going to be extremely intriguing. It's got a lot of different question marks on both teams, and really for the large field GPP angle, I think we've got ourselves a potential gold mine at hand. So last night, of course, the reason why we're mentioning this is there's going to be a lot of recency bias tied to last night. Last night, the 3-3s hit, right? The Chiefs-Jets game was expected to be a blowout. A lot of people, myself included, just for full transparency, thought the 4-2 or even 5-1 Chiefs script was the way to go out there and bink GPPs, and myself included went out there and made sure I only entered, right, at least 4-2 stacks for the Chiefs side, and oh boy were we wrong last night, right? Zach Wilson went out there and balled out, and really a lot of people got burned, right? A lot of the sharps out there, touts, right, went fully in on the Chiefs side last night, which was understandable, right, given the script and given what most people thought would unfold. Well, today, that recency bias is going to wreak a bunch of chaos out there. You've got the close spread, right, 2.5 point spread, pretty similar total to what we saw last night, and it's really hard to choose a winner between the Seahawks and the Giants. They've got two teams that are middling, really struggling to this point of the season, both with a lot of potential, but if you're trying to choose a winner here, right, it's pretty close to a coin flip, and I tend to agree with that. The issue with that sentiment is that means everyone's going to enter 3-3s, right, or 4-2 stacks, right, in either direction. And while I think that is the optimal play for single entries, for cash sort of contests, in large field GPPs, the 5-1s or even the more contrarian 4-2 stacks are going to be completely underutilized. You're looking at a huge game theory edge out there, and that's why tonight might be one for the record books when it comes to playing DFS, right? Especially if you're one of the contrarian bros, might be one of the better game theory angles that we've seen for quite some time. So we're going to go through the players real quickly here. We'll talk about the expected roles and whatnot, but just know that we're talking about their median role, right? What we expect to see, right, most of the time tonight. What I think is going to be a little bit more intriguing are some of the, differentiation scripts that you could go with, right? Some of the, oddball things that might happen tonight that I'll also make sure to bring up too. So first off, if you're looking for all my player pool, all the projections as they change, check out the Patreon. Over here, we've got the player pool tabs blacked out. Those, of course, are for the Patreon members, but we've added to it quite a bit as well. We've got core plays on there. We've got the different scripts that I'm running players in, descriptions for how to use them and when to use certain players, and player notes for pretty much everyone in the pool. The script notes usually do a pretty good job at describing, right, how I'm using a player, but people were asking for even more information about them, so went out there and added a completely extra tab to go out there and further elaborate on how certain players are expected to play tonight. So if you're wondering for exactly who I'm playing and how I'm playing them, check out the Patreon, but you'll be able to get a good idea tonight of what to expect and to go out there and make your own player pool. So first off, Kenneth Walker III is way overpriced. He's $10,800 at flex, which makes him intriguing from the game theory angle, right? He's lower owned than he would be otherwise. If he was $9,500 like he probably should be, he'd probably be 50 to 60% owned. So if you're in those large field GPPs, you might want to get to Kenneth Walker III, right? Potentially low owned, a little piece of differentiation, and it's not like it's impossible for him to get there at that price tag. Both quarterbacks are perfectly live. It's more so how you're using the quarterbacks than whether you're going to use them. I think you should definitely be playing both quarterbacks. Maybe not in every single lineup, but every lineup should have at least one of those two, in my opinion. Geno Smith, you probably want to pass, at least one pass catcher, probably at least two when you're playing Geno Smith the captain. And with Daniel Jones, he does bring a ton more rushing upside to the table. But in most lineups that you're using Jones, you probably want at least one pass catcher on the Giants. The Seattle side, a lot more predictable than what we have over there in the Giants. You have the top three receivers for Seattle getting, 80, 90% of the workload there. Whereas on the Giants, it's a collection of 5-6 wide receivers that are seemingly interchangeable pieces week to week. So really tonight is going to be won or lost, right, with how you handle the Giants wide receivers. And oh boy, do I have some hot takes on that end. So we'll spend a lot of time talking about the Giants wide receivers, but that's why, right? It's where you're going to win or lose the slate tonight. The Seahawks, if you're going to play them in a 3-3 stack, right, it's usually Geno plus 2 wide receivers. Maybe it's a Kenneth Walker Geno plus 1 wide receiver. Maybe it's a Kenneth Walker Seattle defense, right? You could go more of the defensive mindset over there for that team. You're not really having to worry about, wide receiver 4s, 5s, and 6s over there for Seattle. You have a few in play, right? You've got the backup tight ends like a Disley. You've got, Colby Parkinson, who's the tight end 2 out there, who I have to say Disley is questionable. Same thing with Noah Fant. So we'll have to see if they end up suiting up tonight. But those are your, fringe options for Seattle, right? Maybe Jake Bobo if you want to throw him in there. Over here for the Giants, we've got Bellinger, Sterling Shepard, Hyatt, Campbell, Robinson. We've got Slayton up here. We've got Hodgins in play. Heck, you've even got Gary Brightwell and Brett Breida, right, who are going to be the number 1 and 2 running backs out there for the Giants tonight. Just a lot more players that are going to see the field, a lot more players that could potentially spike that upside. And really, that's where you're going to have to make some of those decisions in the fades. So we won't spend as much time talking about Seattle, but yeah, both quarterbacks are live. It's more so just how you're using them. I would say Daniel Jones, you could probably use a little bit more effectively naked than somebody like a Geno Smith, but you still probably want to have some sort of correlation in there. DK Metcalf, super chalky because of the price tag. He's way cheaper than he should be. Tyler Lockett, on the other hand, a little bit too expensive compared to where he should probably be priced. So you can see there the ownership difference between Metcalf and Lockett. I've got Metcalf at closer to 65% ownership, and you've got Tyler Lockett right sub 50% owned at this point. So again, in single entries, cash lineups, right, DK Metcalf projects a lot better than somebody like Tyler Lockett. You can see in terms of points per dollar, it's pretty close, but in terms of ceiling performance, right, DK Metcalf has the higher ceiling there. In large field GPPs, though, the game theory angle might say to take Tyler Lockett, right? It's only a 0.7 point difference. There are definitely going to be games where Lockett outscores DK Metcalf, especially in games where DK Metcalf isn't getting that touchdown equity. Tyler Lockett, of course, right? PPR monster when it comes to his scoring. Just something to consider for large field GPPs, right? He might be the guy you have to have there. Darren Waller has a fantastic matchup, has a fantastic price tag at $7,000 too. So he's also going to be extremely popular. In fact, even more popular than Tyler Lockett. So a little bit of a ownership squeeze going on there with Metcalf and Waller priced around him. Matt Breida is probably the best value play on the slate. Again, we're expecting Saquon Barkley to sit. He's doubtful as of right now. So without Saquon Barkley, Breida is going to see at least probably 70% of the snaps tonight, maybe even closer to 80% in a competitive game script, which at 12, a 12.6 point projection isn't going to break the slate, but is still excellent value, and I'm locking in plenty of lineups. Isaiah Hodgins, Slayton, so now we're getting down to these wide receivers on the Giants. This is where I think there's a little bit of a dead zone, right? Hodgins, Slayton, I don't project all that much differently than guys like a Wan'Dale Robinson, Paris Campbell, Jalen Hyatt. You can see it's like a 1.5, 2 point projection difference across the board there, but they're twice as expensive, right? They're $5,800. They're $5,200. The ownership is similar too, right? 14.6% at flex, 19% for Slayton. Let's see. We've got Robinson at 12, right? Paris Campbell at 11, 12%. In fact, even lower owned, right, than those 1 and 2 wide receivers. My hot take for tonight, right, is that in large field GPPs, maybe you play Hodgins and Darius Slayton, right? Because by spending up here to the 5K range, it's going to make you a little bit different with some of your spend up options. And I think in large field GPPs, they might actually get you a little bit more different than taking their quote unquote lower owned counterparts. Because when you're taking Wan'Dale Robinson, Paris Campbell, who I think like in cash contests are going to be fantastic for tonight, the issue with that is now you're taking super chalky options instead, right? You're spending up from like being able to take, let's say, like I said, Hodgins, and now you're spending up and taking, let's say, like another DK Metcalf, or maybe you're squeezing in, right, Tyler Lockett or a Darren Waller. well, they're 30-40% owned, right? So you're adding, right? Oh, you're getting slightly lower ownership on one of these players down here, but you're also likely spending up at another spot and taking somebody who's way higher owned than their counterparts. So my hot take for tonight is that Hodge and Slane, right, don't project very well in terms of their points per dollar projections, but because of how it changes your lineup construction, there's utility getting there, right? And they're technically the number 1 and 2 wide receivers on this team. So I think that the ownership on these two might continue to go lower and lower throughout the day, right? As people are starting to identify the Wan'Dale Robinsons, the Paris Campbells as excellent values. And if you're playing in a game theory kind of contest, right? Large field GPP, for example, right? You might want to consider avoiding these players if the ownership continues to tick up. Now to take a look at the Seahawks, much more predictable like I was saying before. You've got Geno Smith, you've got Kenneth Walker as your two main spend-up options. Gotta say, both pretty expensive there, so you're gonna pay an arm and a leg to take either player, but outside of that, also very predictable, right? DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett we mentioned before, Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? Going to see some snaps tonight, and then not a ton of cheap options that are all that viable, maybe outside of the tight ends. So we'll have to see if Disley plays, if Parkinson or Fant are going to be active. If we have only Parkinson active, right, first off, his ownership is going to skyrocket. But even if Fant is out, or even if just Disley is out, Parkinson's going to be pretty popular tonight. So as of right now, I've got him like 6% owned. If all three are active, I think I like Parkinson even more in that kind of script because he is the one active, healthy tight end out there on the Seahawks. And even if Fant plays, right, he's not really that much better in terms of a point projection than somebody like a Parkinson. He's a lot more expensive, and you can see the ownership's higher on Fant as well. So really, I'm going to like Parkinson no matter what happens tonight, but I think even more so if all of these tight ends play. Like taking a chalky Colby Parkinson never really feels great, right? You don't want to play him in like half your lineups because he has so much volatility when it comes to his range of outcomes. But at the same time, a low-owned Parkinson, he's only $800, right? Lets you spend up for, a Geno Smith plus a Walker, right? If you really want to go in that kind of direction. So there are plenty of game scripts where Parkinson makes sense, right? Especially if you're trying to take some of the more expensive options. And just another name to consider out there for Seattle. And top of Jake Bobo, who this is his home game tonight. He's from New York. He's going to have a lot of people in the stands that he knows. His touchdown scorer prop is better than some of the other players on the Giants that are seemingly going to have a bigger role. So he's got better touchdown odds than Wan'Dale Robinson, Paris Campbell, I believe better than Jalen Hyatt as well. So, for somebody at $200, right, that has seemingly all that touchdown equity at no ownership, seems like somebody that I'm going to play in at least a few lineups tonight. So I would say the Seahawks side, not as many names out there, not as many mouths to feed, makes them a little bit more intriguing, especially from like just the median point projection perspective. But also they're all higher owned, right? Even somebody down here like Zach Charbonnet, right, is still like 10% owned. Colby Parkinson, Disley, right? They're still going to see ownership tonight because there's not that many guys there. Not many names, right, that are fantasy viable out there on the Seahawks side of things. The last thing we'll touch on before hopping over to the prop side of things is going to be a few of the fringe scripts that we'll be entering. So we talked about a few of the different players, especially for some differentiation that you might want to get to, but some of the fringe scripts you might want to consider would be a rushing heavy script for the Seahawks, right? I know a lot of people tonight are probably going to play Geno lineups where they match them up with like 2-3 wide receivers, but maybe it's Kenneth Walker scoring all the touchdowns, Seattle defense controlling the game, and PPR monsters like Tyler Lockett that get the job done, right? If some of the touchdown equity is going to be sucked up by the rushing game, well, that makes players like Lockett even better than Metcalf, right? I know the points projection, right, favors Metcalf, but in a game without a touchdown, Lockett's going to outscore Metcalf most of the time. So those are just a few fringe outcomes to consider. I mean, if you want to go with the Geno Smith captain lineup, right, you could take a few of the wide receivers, but maybe you mix in like a Bobo, like we were just talking about before, for some of that differentiation in that script. On the other side of things, maybe you play a Daniel Jones captain, right? And rather than taking a bunch of wide receivers with him, you assume it's the rushing upside that gets him there, right? And maybe it's a 2-4 stack where, Daniel Jones is your captain. You just use one other player from the Giants, and then it's 4 players from the Seahawks, right? The way that I'm attacking the slate, like I was talking about off the bat, is a little bit more creatively, right? Trying to think of these fringe outcomes where I'm not chopping first place with 50 other people, right? I'm playing in the large field GPPs with my set of 150 lineups, and my goal tonight is to not only win first place, right? That would be great, right? It's always hard to do that, but when I win, I want to win a good portion of the pie, right? I don't want to have that 50 duplicate train that's going out there and banking first place, right? So I can take that screenshot and win like 4 or 5 grand, right? When I win, I want to win all of the 500 grand, or like at most chopping it 3-4 different ways. Those are the type of lineups that I'm going with for tonight. So a few other thoughts, right? Matt Breida captain lineups, right? That would be a pretty good way to get different tonight. If you could stomach like a Jackson Smith and Jigma lineup at captain, right, that's going to make you extremely different there. Playing the defenses in general, I think are going to be a good way to get different tonight. And well, should I even say the kicker at captain lineups, right? We see that every once in a blue moon, go out there and get there. With 2 mid quarterbacks, right? These defenses and kickers, I think are even more viable, even more likely to get there than any other kind of slate. I mean, first off, the inefficiency in the red zone, right? That helps the kickers, but also throwing pick sixes, right? Making mistakes like you've seen from Geno Smith. Maybe not as much over the last few years, but especially in his career, right? You've seen those mistakes from Geno. And then Daniel Jones is a pick six machine. So just different kind of scripts to consider, different types of plays that you could get to get you some of that differentiation for large field contests. All right, and now for some prop stuff for tonight. So we'll start with Underdog Fantasy, then hop over to Prize Picks, which we've seen a ton of bumps for tonight's game already. So I ended up getting Metcalf at 65.5 receiving yards, but even at 67.5, I would still take the over. He's got a great matchup against the Giants secondary that not only lacks size when it comes to their defensive backs, but also lacks any really good man corners, and especially good press man corners, something that DK Metcalf is normally able to eat up. So at 67.5 receiving yards, I took his over, right? 65.5 is the number that I got, but he's still heavily juiced towards the over at this number. And considering it's only 2 yards off what I took, I still definitely recommend taking that number. We've also got Darren Waller, who I also got at 45.5 receiving yards. So he's been bumped up 4 yards at this point, but even at this number is also still juiced towards the over. So 2 numbers that were a little bit better this morning than what you can get right now, but even after slight bumps, right, I'd still favor the overs here. Darren Waller also has a great matchup against the Seattle linebackers. If they want to put a safety on Waller, it's not really going to help either. They've been absolutely killed by tight ends and wide receivers in the slot over the first 3 games. And on top of that, Darren Waller is the most consistent threat on the Giants offense, right? You have all of those wide receivers that are going to slot in and out of the game. Well, outside of Darren Waller, they've got Daniel Bellinger over there for the Giants, and he's more of a blocker than anything. So if you're looking for somebody that's going to play a lot tonight, right, for the Giants side, I'd say the only real for sure options are Breida. We knew he was going to play a whole lot, and then Darren Waller, right? He's going to play almost every single snap. So barring injury, of course. So I like these 2 for overs. Like I said, the odds still like them at this point, and we've already seen a lot of movement on these 2 props, so we'll probably see some of them throughout the day. If you look at some of these like touchdown scorer props, I've been considering taking like Waller's touchdown prop, but I haven't done so yet. I know not everyone has access to these little like spicy ones here where you get the extra payout on them, but it's pretty crazy how it affects the payout, right? If you were to add Lockett in there, I mean, look at this. You get 9x for a 3-leg card. There are a few that I might consider adding over there at the Patreon. So if you're looking for all the slips I'm entering for tonight, check out the Patreon. On there, of course, I'm posting the slips and all the DFS stuff that we're doing for tonight. But yeah, these 2x payout ones, like heck, even Slain, like I know these wide receivers are so hard to get right for the Giants, but like look at this, it's a 12x payout for a 3-leg card. So we might experiment with that a little bit later on, but yeah, Underdog, I'm loving the selection here. A lot of different props to choose from, a lot of defensive props that we could take. I mean, even these sack props, I mean, same kind of thing, like 1.25x. That's probably not enough juice to go out there and take a Leonard Williams prop, but still just good stuff, right? Like what we're seeing on Underdog, and definitely a lot of selection there. All right, and if you're going to look at anything on Prize Picks, right, you could take these same 2 players. The unfortunate part is that first off, Waller's also at 49.5. He was at 44.5 this morning on Prize Picks. And then DK Metcalf here also just got bumped up, like within the last few minutes, from 67.5 up to 68.5. So more so showing you this on here to let you know the value on Underdog's actually better than what you can get on Prize Picks. And yeah, I didn't even enter over here in Prize Picks because of the limits they have me at. They have me at $25 slips. So really, the exposure I'd get there would be trivial, if anything. But if you're somebody that only has access to Prize Picks, you could pretty much get the same lines over there, right? So if you can take, the underdog lines, I'd recommend that because you get a better line on DK Metcalf. But if you only have access to Prize Picks, which I don't know why that would be the case, right? I think every state that has Prize Picks should have Underdog as well. Then take it over there in Underdog, right? So just pointing that out over there. Some other categories on Prize Picks that are a little bit intriguing, right? We don't have the punt props for every single game over there in Underdog. You have some of the target props that we don't have for every single player. So some value that we might be able to extract off the board there. But yeah, with the limits I've got on Prize Picks, it's I don't play it as often anymore, right? Underdog, just a better place for me to play personally, but a lot of value to be had on that end too. And honestly, the selection on Prize Picks a little bit more significant, right? We've got all these different combo props that you can take that you can usually find an edge with as well. So yeah, definitely we'll be hitting up that board throughout the day and potentially trying to find even more value to post to you guys on Patreon. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for the Monday Night Football preview. Hopefully you feel a little bit more prepared for those DFS lineups and for your prop slips tonight and can go out there and have yourself a profitable slate. Until next time, best of luck out there with that exposure, and go ahead and smash that like button on the way out of here as well. Goes a long way with helping support the channel, grow the channel, my business, everything that we're doing here, and also lets me know that you're enjoying the content that you're seeing. Also, if you want to go ahead and comment the winner and the winning margin tonight, if you're able to get that correct, the team and the winning margin, you'll get a free month of my Patreon. Of course, guys, all the slips, all the different spreadsheets that you see in my videos are posted over there on the Patreon page. But if you want a free month for yourself, just go ahead and leave that guess down below. And no editing it after the fact. It tells me when you edit comments. So let's keep this as fair as possible. But yeah, your winner and your winning margin tonight, and you can go ahead and take home that free membership. We did the same thing for the Ryder Cup, also for the last Showdown slate that we covered, but no one was able to get the correct score. So this time, trying to make it a little bit of an easier task, right? The Ryder Cup score was pretty difficult. The captain plus actual score of the captain was pretty hard to guess, but winner plus winning margin seems a little bit more reasonable. So go ahead, guess down below. I'm going to go ahead and take the Seahawks -3. So we'll go with a 3-point victory there, but would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. Until next time, guys, best of luck with all those lineups and all that exposure. And let's go ahead and have ourselves a night.